we can start, hey? As people join in, welcome Yasmin Kevadia from Johannesburg, welcome Dixon from Tanzania. I see many colleagues here I see Eta, welcome, Geoffrey. I see some of our AUHF members as well have joined. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us for today's webinar. We are so excited to have you today. Today, this is a webinar that the AUHF together with CAF has put up together. And just as a way of introduction, perhaps, my name is Thandiwe Dlamini. I am the program manager for the AUHF. I am based in Rosebank, Johannesburg, and CAF is the secretariat of the AUHF. I welcome you all to this webinar, which is Innovation in Affordable Housing, where we are looking to look at the lessons from the 2022-2023 Housing Finance Yearbook in Africa, which is the 14th edition. Thank you so much all for joining us today. We have with us today panelists who will share some of their impactful innovations that have been highlighted in the 14th edition of the yearbook, which looks like this. I'm hoping that we have all gone through it, we have downloaded it, and we have had some time to go through it. But today is the day that we get some of the people who are working on the actual innovations that are highlighted in this year's yearbook to join us and to share their experience. And we also have my colleague from CAF who also shares some expertise and experience from this year's yearbook. Thank you so much, everyone. We have opened up the chat. Please, as we go through the session today, please feel free to share your comments and any questions within the chat. We want to engage with everyone today. We want the session to be engaging. Let's ask questions. Let's learn more. And perhaps we could also implement some of these innovations in our own countries if it works. But thank you so much, everyone. Today, we do have, as part of our webinar today, we have Alison Changana, who is the head of research and market intelligence from CAF. She will introduce herself just in a moment. And we also have Yabajan Jai, who is the general manager of TAF Africa Global. And TAF is also a member of the AUHF. And we also have with us Benjamin Collenberg, who is an architectural director from urban think tank Empower in Cape Town, South Africa. We also have with us today Salum Mshamu, who is a PhD student from Nuffield Department of Clinical Medicine, University of Oxford, and who has worked on one of the innovations from Tanzania. He also introduced himself and shared more light about the different projects that they are working on. As a way of starting, I want to invite my colleague Alison Changana to take us through, to tell us more about the yearbook and share some of the experience and expertise from her end. Over to you, Alison.
Okay, let me try that again. Thanks very much, Thandiwe. And welcome to everyone. It's lovely to see all the faces and familiar names. Thandiwe, if you could just share my slides, that would be great.
I am working
As
on
Thandiwe mentioned, I'm at CAF. I'm the head of research at CAF. I've been with CAF about 5 or 6 years, and I am the editor of the yearbook, which is our flagship publication as the Center for Affordable Housing Finance. We're now in our 14th edition. And I just want to share with you a little bit about what the yearbook is, and then some about the theme of this year's yearbook, which was innovation. And that will then set the stage for us to proceed into our presentations. The yearbook is a tradition of CAF that obviously comes out yearly. It has profiles on each of the 54 countries and 1 regional territory in Africa that is updated every year. The profiles contain information on the housing and housing finance sectors and on the macroeconomy and on housing policy. And they're authored by individual consultants, primarily from within each country. Before I go any further, I just want to acknowledge Yasmin, who's in the audience. Yasmin was assisted me with editing the yearbook this year, which means thousands of hours. And much blood, sweat, and tears. So I just want to say thank you. Yasmin is here. If we could go on to the next slide. The yearbook is published in both French and English simultaneously. It was published in November, and you can find the entire document online on CAF's website. You can also download each of the individual country profiles, which can often be useful if you're doing research or traveling to a particular country. You can see that we've done 14 of them. It's a massive collaborative effort, the yearbook. So we don't sit in Johannesburg and write about Somalia and Togo. What we do is we do an open call for authors from across the continent and really the globe. And then we select authors for each of the countries. We try to choose authors that stay in country, but are not always able to do so. And sometimes the authors work within teams as well. The authors are responsible for researching and writing the profile, but also collecting data for us on the ground in terms of some key housing and housing finance indicators that are published at the beginning of each of the profiles. So this year we had a record number of 73 contributing authors to the yearbook. And on top of that, there were a team of 15 external editors who went through each of the profiles carefully. As I said, this encompasses the 55 countries and territories. What we do in terms of the bilingual nature of the yearbook is that we allow authors to either author originally in French or originally in English. And then we do some magic translation across both directions to do a simultaneous publication of both languages in November. Go to the next slide. I think it's just important to highlight the diversity of the input and the voices. And that's why I think it's so exciting leading into what we're doing today, because the way that we do the yearbook enables us to hear from all corners of the continent. And the 3 examples of projects that you'll hear today are examples of how we're able to do that, how we're able to understand what's actually happening on the ground in projects. This is the whole list of authors and editors that you can see are from across the globe. You can go to the next slide. And then this is our incredible team that works behind the scenes in terms of translation and contributions and inputs and such. Next slide. So what we did this year was to try to focus on innovation in housing and housing finance. And when we said innovation, when we spoke to the yearbook authors about that, we were very open-ended. So we were interested in examples of innovation in any area or any step of the value chain. So that could be construction materials, it could be construction methods, it could be housing finance products, end user products, it could be construction finance, or how the project overall is set up and structured in terms of partnerships. The innovation could also be around the planning and the design of the unit as well, or the consideration of particular aspects, such as climate change, or energy efficiency, and the use of technology as well. And I want to make that point that our innovation definition was broad, because I think often in innovation, we go straight to technology. And there's a lot of ways that we can be innovative in housing delivery without just talking about blockchains or other online tools. So we asked each of the yearbook authors for all 54 countries to try to give us an example of innovation. And we received amazing examples across the board in all the countries and related to all different aspects of this sector. So we had innovation around green, around energy efficiency, and you can see the various countries in this list that demonstrated examples of that. There was also around financing, around refurbishment, informal settlement upgrading. There were innovations around land and tenure, as well as government delivery and the role of the public sector in housing delivery. There were innovations in terms of government subsidies as well, ways that particular target groups were reached and products were designed for their particular needs. So I think it's a fabulous example. And so what we did was we took all of those little case studies that are in each of the profiles, and we pulled them into one booklet that is also available on our website, which is fantastic to flip through. And I make this point because I think a lot of us are often frustrated in this work and feel that we're going up a very steep mountain with a very large boulder. But if you want to spend 10 minutes getting excited, then go to the innovation booklet on our website and just flip through it. And you'll see some ideas that are out there that are happening, that are subjects of experimentation and all sorts of fantastic collaborations. And I think it's quite inspiring. If we can go to the next slide. So this is one example of what we were able to look into. So I mentioned that the yearbook authors do data collection on the ground. And I apologize for the blurriness of this graph. But one of the key indicators that we highlight in the yearbook and collect every year is an indicator on the cost of the cheapest newly built house in a particular country without government subsidy. So what is the cheapest house that's actually on the market, new house, that isn't delivered by government or substantially supported with government finances? We asked this question of all the countries, but this year we also honed in on building materials. And specifically, we asked the authors to find out the cost of ceramic tiling, of roof tiling, of steel roof sheeting, and of cement, 50 kg bag of cement. And we made these indicators, we selected these just as typical housing materials that are used in the construction process. And what that enabled us to do was to then compare the cost of those items, those ingredient components into the construction process, with the cost of the cheapest newly built house. And when we mapped those on top of each other in the graph, we were actually surprised. We had expected to see a general sort of trend, even if it wasn't clean and clear, a general sort of trend that said, if the building materials are cheaper in a country, then the price point at which the private sector was able to put out the cheapest newly built house would be lower. Okay. But you can see in this graph, the orange line shows the price of the newly built house, and the dots are the various price points for the different building materials. And you can see that this is all over the map, essentially. So what this tells us pretty clearly is that there's a whole bunch of other factors that are clearly impacting as much, if not more, onto the price of the house that goes to market than just the building materials themselves. What we saw in the innovation information that we received from the countries was a lot of innovation around building materials. So there were examples of eco-friendly mud bricks in Mali, Duro bricks in Malawi, lots of different experimentations with clay and with the material, earth blocks in South Sudan, and sort of a clay cement material that is being used in Cameroon. There were examples of prefabricated housing and brick construction as well in Chad. So if you look through the booklet, you'll see other examples of some fascinating ways that people have experimented with local materials and experimented with creating these building materials locally in order to use local labor and to reduce the transport costs, which obviously then has a impact upon affordability, but also on the environment, reduces the impact on the environment. So if you could just go to the next slide. So just by way of wrapping up then, I want to encourage you, as you're listening today or after the webinar today, to go ahead and download our innovations booklet that you can find on the website on the link that is provided here. And it'll allow you to see all of these various case studies that we have listed here on the slide in different areas: social housing, affordability, partnerships, mass housing, obviously green, and women and targeted groups as well. So I just wanted to present where this information came from, which was through the yearbook process, and also demonstrate to you the availability of additional case studies if this is an area you're particularly interested in. And from here, we can go on to the 3 great case studies that we can learn about today. Thanks, Tandiwi.
Great. Thank you so much, Alison, for that presentation. I'm just checking if we have any questions. Yes, we do have. Well, we have a comment. I'm not sure if there's any questions. If people would please share any questions that you have on the Q&A, which is open at the moment. I don't see any. So perhaps we could move on to our next presentation, which is from TAP Africa Global. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. It is a pleasure taking part in this. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can. And I've opened up the share so that you can, the platform so that you can share your presentation too.
Great. I'll just do that right now.
Thank you.
I am honored to be part of this webinar, and I hope that the deliberations today would bring about good change and more affordable housing for more people to have housing for them. My name is Yaba Janjai, and I'm the General Manager of TAP Africa Global. I would like to start first by talking about TAP Africa Global, where our experience is global, but our focus is really Africa. We started this company in 1990 as TAP Construction Company, as a construction company. And to date, after 34 years, we're registered in 9 African countries and active and dominant in 3 currently, namely Nigeria, the Gambia, and most recently in Sierra Leone. We have real estate development in affordable housing is what we focused on. But through our history, since we were incorporated in 1990 to date, we have done luxury housing. We have done hotels, shopping malls, and now we focus mainly on affordable housing estates. We offer real estate rentals also. So we have a department, a property management department in the Gambia, where once you invest in our property and you buy, we can manage the property and put it back on the market, put it on the market for you for rentals and manage it. This is currently in the Gambia. For financing of our houses, we have mortgages that we've negotiated in the Gambia with local banks, where in order to finance these houses, we are partnered with EcoBank Gambia, Guarantee Trust Bank Gambia, and Trust Bank Limited in Gambia. We partnered in order to offer mortgage loans to qualified clients, where anyone that's interested in buying a TAP home in the Gambia can put down a deposit of 25%, and then the balance can be repaid over 10 years. Most recently, last year, we had a microfinance company also that joined in, and they even brought the down payment further down to 20%. When we started the mortgages in 2017, the down payment was up to 40%. Through negotiations, over the years. It's been brought down to 25 for most banks, and then the microfinance company to 20%. With the microfinance company, they also spread your payments over 10 years instead of 15. Over 15 years instead of 10. And this has really made a lot of people sign on to our housing scheme. We also do public-private partnerships in Nigeria, which is the country where we have the most housing so far. We have delivered 1,200 units in River State, in Port Harcourt, Nigeria, where there was a partnership between the River State government with Africa Global, and this project has already been completed. Most recently, we have also partnered again with the River State government, where we're delivering 20,000 homes in Nigeria. In Sierra Leone, it's also a PPP, where we've partnered with the Sierra Leone government, and we're delivering 5,000 homes within the next 5 years. Okay. So far, our vision, since 2018, we had a vision of delivering 1 million affordable quality homes within the next 20 years by 2038. And our goal is to be the leading property developer in Africa. We've delivered so far 9 residential estates across the 3 countries. And then we're registered in 9 different countries at the moment. We've worked with different partners, with UNDP, UN Habitat, Shelter Afrique, and the local banks, EcoBank, GT Bank, the World Bank also, and Reliance. Reliance is the microfinance company that came in last year with the 15-year mortgage. To touch on our brand voice, our able founder and CEO, Mr. Mustafa Njai, heads the company, and through his vision, we have been able to deliver on the vision of 1 million homes within the next 20 years. He has experience of over 50 years in construction and estate development, and he's the one leading the very able Africa Global team. I must mention also, we have a very young, dynamic team where 70% of our management team in the Gambia are all female. So we're very conscious of the women leading, and we take very much pride in this aspect. Okay, we'll just dive into our projects. Our track record, we've had our first affordable housing estate launched in the Gambia, in Yundum, and this was in the year 2000. We delivered 210 affordable houses. There were 2 and 3 bedroom bungalows, price range between $12,000 to $25,000. With amenities of mosques, shops, and sporting facilities. In 2006, we delivered the 52 presidential villas in Beaufort Gardens Estate for the AU summit that was happening in the Gambia. We delivered these 52 units within a period of 6 months. In Beaufort, in 2002, we delivered 500 more upscale housing units that cost a project cost of $40 million. We built and delivered 2 and 3 bedroom houses and 4 bedroom story buildings and apartment blocks. The price range at that time was between $60,000 to $200,000, and it was partly co-financed by Shelter Afrique. We also have a shopping mall and offices and a gym that's present at the estate, and that's where our head office is located, at the Madiba Mall at both gardens. Okay. So the current projects that we have, I have a video to play. It's just a minute video, so I will just keep quiet now and just play the video. Thank you very much. Just to summarize, we have projects ongoing right now in the Gambia, the Tough City projects in Gambia, in Sierra Leone, and in Port Harcourt. In the Gambia, we're delivering 5,000 units at the Tough City in Gunjur. We launched in 2021, October, and we have residential estates, it's mixed use, and a commercial area. And then we have an educational area where we have a live, work, and play concept. And this is the same concept that we've taken to Sierra Leone and in Nigeria. Sierra Leone is 5,000 units, and we have started at the John Obey site, where we're delivering 1,200 units. This was started last year in 2023. This year, we've launched the Greater Tough City in Port Harcourt. We also have 20,000 units to deliver in Port Harcourt. And right now, all of those are ongoing, and it's been summarized in this video. All right, I would like to just talk about our affordable house designs. We have uniformed house models for all three countries and in all the three projects. This one you see is a 2-bedroom, 49 square meter bungalow. In Sierra Leone, it's called the Saleh. In the Gambia, it's called the Mariato. And then in Greater Tough, Nigeria, it's called Charity. You would notice that names are all female names. And this is one concept that we've adopted and kept for the past few years, where we name all our house designs after women's name, the most popular names that are within the different countries. This 49 square meter model is a 2-bedroom. It has 2 baths, more like a shower. And then we have a kitchen, fully fitted kitchen, and then a living room, and then a parking area. These models are usually built on average 250 to 300 square meter plots, which is a good size to have a parking area for 2 cars. We move on to the second model that we have. In Taf Salon in Sierra Leone, it's a 2-bedroom hawa, 73 square meters. In Taf Gambia, it's called a haja, and it's a 68 square meter. It's actually a bit smaller, 68 square meter bungalow. And in Greater Taf, Nigeria, it's called the Favor. It's also a 2-bedroom with 2 showers, a kitchen, a living room, and then enough room for parking area. The third one is the Sia, which is also a 3-bedroom bungalow. This one is a 90 square meter building area. In Tafsalone, it's called the Sia. In the Gambia, it's the Majula. And then in Greater Taf, Nigeria, it's called the Blessing. This model has 3 bedrooms and 2 baths, a kitchen, a living room, and a good sized parking area. In Sierra Leone and in Gambia, we have a story building that is supposed to be an affordable one. It's a good size. It's 176 square meters. Not as affordable as the bungalows, but as you can see, it's much bigger for people that would want more space and bigger houses. This is a model that we have in the Gambia and in Sierra Leone. It's called the Fatima, and in Gambia, it's called the Nima. So apart from that, I would want to talk about our green initiative, where we, with every tree that we cut down in all our projects, we replace it, and we replace it with 5 more. In every unit, in every house that we sell in the Taf City projects, we plant 5 fruit trees in each of these housing units. This is to contribute to the environment and to make sure that our projects are all very green and sustainable. Okay, I think that's all for my presentation. Thank you very much. And I would love to hear your questions and any contributions.
Great, thank you so much, Bajan. There's a number of questions. There's about 2 or so that I'm seeing here on the chat. We have Catherine, who's asking, first of all, commending your work, which looks fantastic. And she says, I'm interested to know whether, for example, in the video you have shown, is the bulk infrastructure already in place or provided by the state? Is there sufficient capacity for greenfields development?
Yes, thank you. Yes, the infrastructure, most of the infrastructure is not provided by the state. And this is for Gambia. For example, in Gambia, the main water line, we had to bring in the water and the electricity because the main grid hasn't got to where we're located. So all this, as a developer, we had to do. In Nigeria, the water and electricity is already where we're located. So all we'll have to do is just bring it into our development. So that one, government has had to bring in. And mind you, that those ones are the PPPs. So with that one and Sierra Leone, the infrastructure is already in place. All we need to do is just bring it into our estates and have it into the individual houses. But for the Gambia, it's we have to bring it in. So we have to bring in the water and electricity and the roads.
Great. Catherine also follows up to say, tree planting, this is fantastic to hear. Do you claim any carbon credits for this?
We're working on it.
Great. Great. And we have a number of questions from Tahib and Bisa, who's asking about how much does Saleh, Hawa, and Sia cost?
The price range is between $50,000 up to about $95,000. That's the price range between the 3. With the smallest one, the Saleh, starting from $50,000.
Great.
In the Gambia, it's a little bit cheaper, but starting from about $42,000.
Amazing. Do you claim any carbon credits for this?
We're working on it, yes.
Okay. And then we also have Alex saying, are the houses green rated?
That is also being worked on. We're working with the being certified for to get green rated.
Great. Thank you so much, Fajan, for that wonderful presentation. There are no more questions that I see here, but in case you have more questions coming in, please keep them coming. I just have one question, though, that I will take back to Alison. About, we had Olu saying, are there universal benchmarks for affordability in the housing sector?
Sorry, I'm just finding my mute. Affordability is something we've been looking at carefully at CAF, and I think all of us struggle with. In terms of international benchmarks, one of the things that we've looked at is whether the common international rules of thumb are appropriate and applicable for Africa. So if you look at, for instance, the United States or in some parts of Europe, it's assumed and allowed that your cost for housing would be around 30% or 1/3, which of course is very high. And when we studied this, and I can share the link on the chat, when we had a look at this, there was additional work that started to say, if you look at developing countries, that's actually much lower. And that's because there are other priorities that preempt housing. So obviously food, school, clothing, etc. So that it's closer to about 20%. But it varies. And one of the other factors that those international benchmarks for affordability, like 30%, don't take into account is transport and the importance, the impact of location of your housing in relation to economic opportunities, to jobs and school, how that impacts on affordability. So if a house is cheap, but it's on the outskirts and you end up spending another 15% of your income to get in and out of town, then actually living in that place is not affordable, right? Even though the housing costs themselves are reduced. So I think one of the lessons that we've learned is that we can't just take the international rule of thumb, but that we have to very much look at housing and transport costs together. So it's not just the cost, the affordability of the house itself, it's the cost of living in the house. It's the overall impact on household expenditure for using that place as shelter. So we've also created an affordability calculator, which is on our website, and I will share the link as well. And what that tries to do is to be a tool for developers, to say, if I have a plot of land and it's about 10 kilometers away from the city center, what would be the appropriate target price to look at for the units that I want to sell and build on that project? And then looking as well from the opposite direction, from the end user, what can I afford with a given income, depending on where the house is in relation to my economic opportunities. So I'll share those links, but generally, yes, affordability is a huge question. And there also are a couple other case studies in the innovation booklet that try to grapple with affordability as well. So I'd encourage you to look at those. Thanks.
Interesting. Thanks so much, Alison. Just to come back to you, Fajan, there is a question on that is, can you please define affordable in the different countries? That is from Ali.
Is that on me as well?
Yes, that's not on you, Alison. That is on CAF.
Yeah, sorry, I was also trying to find my mute. Affordable, I would say, is reasonably priced, correct? But it is different in every country. I would imagine in the Gambia, what would be affordable there might be a bit slightly different from in Nigeria and in Sierra Leone. What we've recently also tried to do in order to make our houses more affordable is the semi-finish housing that we've just introduced. Actually, we introduced it in Nigeria, and it's been selling quite well, where people we would build a structure up to roof level and fence it and just plaster it, and then people would buy it in that state and finish it to their taste and affordability. So if you can afford, let's say, marble tiles, that price is different from porcelain tiles or ceramic tiles. And the materials that you put into these houses is what would now determine the price or the cost of the house, right? So with that, still trying to bring down those figures so more people can afford it. I would say that is where the tricky part is, and we've been experimenting with these new products. In the Gambia, we've launched it, but I can tell you people what they're looking for, even though they might not be able to afford a finished house, they would rather have that than a semi-finished house. But in Nigeria, people are buying the semi-finished house and finishing up themselves.
Great. Thank you so much, Debajan. There's also three questions that I will be taking for you again. There is one from Etta. She says, how could you share about interest rate and financing models?
Yes, in the Gambia, where we have the mortgages, interest rates were as low as 13%, which is the lowest we've had in the Gambia for a very long time. When we launched in 2018, when we launched the mortgage schemes, and this was with one of the banks out of the three. Right now, the interest rates have gone up to double digits, 20-something%. And all this actually adds to the problems of affordability, because if the house is at a certain price and the financing that you would need to take out in order to buy it is so expensive, it doesn't turn out to be as affordable as it should be. Plus the tenor. 10 years, if you look at it, I would say it's too short for a mortgage. Mortgage should be at least 25 years long or even longer. That way, the monthly payments that people will be paying will be much more affordable. But that we haven't been able to get in any of the countries just yet. But we're still knocking on the doors of all these financial institutions in order to come together and get that for our clients.
Great. Another question from Steve to you, Bajan. Is the electric primarily solar or transmission line?
It's a transmission line with independent prepaid meters where people would buy electricity credits and have it on. We do have packages where we can offer individual solar panels for the different houses, but again, those are add-ons. So if one can afford it, then it's an option to add on to your house.
Great. And the last one that I'm taking for you is regarding diversity of the different family setups. Are those houses useful? That's from Barnabas James. Are those houses useful for polygamy families? And do they have health support for cases such as communicable diseases?
Can you just repeat the first part? I heard polygamous from there.
Yes, so are the houses useful for polygamy families? Can they accommodate a structure of a polygamy family?
Yes, I believe so, because with the housing bungalows that we have, and even the story buildings, the size of plot, you have the option to buy different sizes of plot depending on what you can afford. We've seen people that will buy a certain plot and build other units within the within the plot that you've bought. So, and we have 3 bedrooms, we have 2 bedrooms, and we have also 4 bedrooms, and it can accommodate polygamous families.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing your projects in the 3 different countries. I think now we'll move on to Ben. If you could take us down to Cape Town and share what you're doing down there.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. We can't hear you, Ben.
Perfect. So, no, so I'm just waiting to share my screen.
Rajan, if you can please stop sharing. Thank you.
There we go. Can you see my screen and can you hear me?
Very colorful and beautiful, and yes, we can hear you.
Brilliant. I'm glad to hear that. Thank you. So yes, I'm Ben Collenberg from Urban Think Tank Empower. I'm gonna jump right into it. I mean, so we've been doing our work in Cape Town in South Africa, and it really predominantly revolves around developing informal settlements. So I think, you know, when we look at these problems from a macro lens and look at these challenges and how do we combat the housing crisis, we often forget to look at the people, the humans behind the project. And I think across Africa, across South Africa, certainly informality is regarded as the problem, whereas in actually for millions, in actual fact, it's the solution to that problem, which is lack of affordable housing, really. So where our first project started is, you know, this man on screen with his family is Pumezo Tsibanto. He's an amazing community leader who was the first, first community member in an informal settlement I'll get to put his hand up and say, look, let's work together. I'm willing to offer up my house to try prototype a better solution. So this is in Cape Town, in Khayelitsha. We're looking specifically in South Sea and Ikwezi Park, and a particular community, a particular plot of land, 4,000 square meter site, where there was previously an informal settlement called BT Wetter. So this is the settlement. It's made up of 2 urban, owned by the city of Cape Town, earmarked for community facility, and the other earmarked for public open space. So what Pumezo did is he offered up his house after a lot of engagement and discussion. And really we prototyped increased density through a growing home, taking a single-story shack, demolishing it, building a double-story unit where the ground floor actually started become used as a community facility, and then which we later painted, especially to celebrate the project, celebrate the prototype, as well as celebrate the attention we're beginning to receive for for the double-story unit. And ultimately, I mean, it's a bit of a spoiler, but this is Pumezo's final house at the end of the project, where it's the empowered development fully realized, embodying the colorful characteristics of the existing community which we worked with. And I think this gradation speaks to the value of pilot projects and prototyping and working together with the community to come up with solutions together. So to start off, we really simultaneously worked bottom up as well as top down, working with the city, as well as on the ground mapping of community, of existing homes, of community needs. We looked at the existing home sizes, the locations within the community, the household income, residents per unit, family dynamic, as well as aspirations for the various residents and where the family wanted to go, looking forwards. And through a series of mapping exercises, we digitized all the data of the families and together with the community started to conceptualize what this community, what this development could be. So bringing it back to a tangible scale. So at quite a high level, we worked with algorithms to place families and residents as efficiently as possible, and then bringing it to a very tangible level where you can actually play with different blocks signifying the homes and kind of collaborate on where families should be are best suited within the development. I mean, there's such a variety of considerations necessary in creating any development, especially in housing an existing community. Some of these considerations were family sizes, which families were to live next to each other, who likes each other, who doesn't like each other, potential for small businesses and shops needing street frontage, and creche and daycare facilities needing additional security. And then, of course, access to public open space and potentially parking provisions, which we unfortunately didn't cater for enough of. But I think that's a story for another day. And through the research, we then began to propose a site development plan, incorporating all the information you've gathered, as well as a phasing scheme of how to relocate residents without any decanting or displacement of families. I think it's so fundamental to work with the community, to gain their trust, to gain their respect. But then there's no shortage of horror stories of communities being relocated for the housing to be built. And for us, it was so important to take this informal settlement, develop the site for the exact existing community already on the site. And in order to fully achieve that, we really needed to work slowly within the community, housing families on the site, and eventually building the development through 6 phases. It was done through a very simple, the Empower concept, Empower upgrade model comes down to a very simple, I guess, approach where we looked at the existing site, calculated how much area is occupied, and calculated the open space, but finally proposing a double-story unit to free up additional space for the benefit of the community, really, whether it's to house additional residents, which is now a possibility, and using the rental of the new residents to pay for the existing residents' homes construction, or the ongoing maintenance of the community after construction, or to potentially use the additional space for public open space or community facilities, which is what we have done in the end. The existing residents still needed to contribute to the new homes. We're working with a range of incomes, but for the vast majority, these residents had no other options. So we started to come up with alternative means to pay for the accommodation, and we came up with the land credit release scheme, where depending on the size of your unit, the bigger your unit, you could use your existing home to lobby your future inputs or financial inputs. So the more space you're currently living in, by giving up your home, the less you have to pay. And even that payment, we set up financing. We set up microfinancing loans, and the residents were never actually asked to pay for the full development. It was always going to be only a small portion of the development, but it was more of a sociological, important sociologically for the residents to pay and take ownership and feel a sense of identity within the space and within the community, within their new homes. And finally, we began to design and work into the tangible architecture of the development, and you will see in a second, but the resultant buildings don't actually look anything like these conceptual sketches, despite being double-story and starting to create little community spaces internally, or small community courtyards. So this is the resultant. This is an image taken from after the 5th phase and before the 6th phase. The 6th phase was the final phase of construction, and I think it's quite a powerful image showing the before and after, just a snapshot of the before and after. And here on the top half of the screen, you can see the full development with all the homes completed. So it's 72 homes, 428 individuals who rehoused in a safer, more dignified homes within a community. There's a public open space, which I'll get to in a second. And what was quite interesting for us is from the beginning of the planning and the enumeration and mapping to the end of the final housing phase of construction, there were additional 3 families who had moved onto the site. And we were quite careful to include them in the development because they were part of the community. So we managed to carve out 3 corners of the site to provide these residents with homes. And I think this talks to the efficiencies of going double-story, of kind of careful consideration in planning, as opposed to a more organic structures in an informal settlement, like you can see in the bottom half of the screen. We then used paint and color to elevate the units, kind of optimizing for a bold and significant architectural experience. Something that in South Africa is very seldom experienced in the townships. I think often these kind of careful design features are reserved for the wealthy and the wealthier areas. But we celebrated the community through interwoven murals or murals designs, kind of celebrating the existing interconnecting community network. But we really wanted to bring as much color and as much life into the buildings as possible to just again celebrate the existing vibrant community. So all the units are duplexes with no family living above or below any other family. There's a series of land ideals, aspirations to own your own land from the top of your roof down to the center of the earth, I guess. And especially when changing the living conditions so drastically to formalize a community-orientated living, I think it was very important to do individual homes, freehold title deeds as opposed to sectional title, and I think the variety of spaces is also very important, from protected open space in a semi-public courtyard to a semi-private ground floor of each home, to then the fully private top floor of each unit where there's just the sleeping and bedroom spaces. This variety of scales often limited to wealthier areas, and in townships there's just deemed to be not enough space for this variety. But it creates an equilibrium to the development, going from a purely public open space up to a private bedroom area, and I think it's quite important. This diagram on screen on the left-hand side shows what we built, and on the right-hand side shows what we aimed for together with the community. So I think it was mentioned earlier, but all of the units were built as the bare bones, where we built the most difficult and expensive components of the home, including the kitchen, the bathrooms, firewalls, concrete slabs, where the residents then came in afterwards and added curtains and upgraded the finishes to include carpentry, and really this optimized for the way for the speed at which we could build and the quantity at which we could build, reducing the overall costs of the homes to account for skills that the residents were already very proficient in. So after we built up and reduced the amount of area on the site, this allowed the opportunity for public open space to be realized in the center of the community, just to again to reinforce the cohesion, existing social connections, and within the community network, and again just to provide that safer, dignified community infrastructure. The concrete block structures you can see in these images, even though they look smooth and soft with softened edges, there's actually they weigh a minimum of 600 kilos each, and they're quite a hard and robust protection of this public open space. So this is quite important to protect the space for the residents, in order to while they're taking ownership of it and while the future phases are being built out. And now it's got, I mean, in the bottom left-hand corner, you see the render of trees. They're now finally planted, and again, the residents have taken ownership. They've already started in these images. You can see through the painting of games onto the concrete pieces. But that was really what was quite important to us, is that it becomes that protected space, that the community protects themselves. And finally, on the land that we freed up, rather than building additional homes for external residents, we built a community facility. So this is actually quite important in maintaining the equilibrium of the community. This belongs to the community, with quite important amenities to support the community. So it includes a soccer field, which doubles up as a gathering space, a creche, internet cafe, as well as an urban rooftop farm, which through these multiple programs generates an income for the full community's management and maintenance. And through the whole holistic program, creates a sustainable operational model for the community once we leave. I think it's all good and well for us to design a fantastic project and to work with the community, but as soon as we leave the site, it needs to take on its own life. And while we aren't finishing construction and walking away immediately, I think the aim is that whether it's 3 years or 5 years down the line, we're actually going to become redundant, and the community is going to have the community is going to be empowered to look after the full precinct on their own. To add to the income generation, we've also conceptualized a community solar system where we've got PV panels along the rooftops and generating power for the community, as well as eventually ultimately feeding back into the grid. And this too is ultimately just an alternative solution that's very seldom thought about. So in the townships are actually, for all intents and purposes, the perfect place to roll out solar energy, because there's significant open space, horizontally spread out, and through relatively low density, as well as it being the most difficult area in any city to adequately provide necessary services or infrastructure. But once we started on this journey, we received quite a lot of pushback and just, I guess, lack of belief if it would be possible. And so we installed solar panels on one unit, powering the public open space. Ultimately, after that, we installed on 3 units, powering those homes and generating slightly more income, slightly more power, sorry. And unfortunately, we aren't yet able to feed it into the grid. So it's going to the community center. But ultimately, when Eskom is ready to allow that feed-in tariff and to pay the feed-in tariff, we're quite excited for that income generation to then literally power the community. Another alternative, if this happens sooner than the feed-in tariff, is actually wheeling through the grid, empowering neighboring communities. So the bottom half of the image is a next door community, a next door informal settlement called BBT Vukani. And I think one of the greatest proof of concept came from this next door community, when, as we were finishing up our community 1, we were approached by the BBT Vukani community leaders to ask for us to design a power upgrade model for them, and to design them a series of Empower homes. So we've received full support from the residents. We've had to build up a denser model for community 2, because just high level numbers in community 1 it was 72 families on a 4,000 square meter site. Community 2, 68 families on a 2,500 square meter site. And we quite conscious about creating a scalable, replicable model. And this was just pushing to increased density while still making space for a community facility, which in BBT Vukani, it's a church, which actually comes from an existing church on site, as well as a public open space, a protected public open space in the center, which you can see in this image. And again, just to really provide those additional amenities to the community. And while we've been looking at that, while we've been planning with them, there's a series of other communities within this small corner of Khayelitsha in Sati in Kwezi Park that have started to raise their hands and request our investigating their sites. I mean, these range from, the smallest site is 12 homes, and the biggest is about 365 homes. So it really tests the urban upgrade model, which we have to create a proper, scalable, and replicable model, which is really what the upgrade models focuses on. And then from there, we've gone to look at the greater Cape Town scale. So in the last 8 years, just to recap, we built 1 unit as a prototype. We then built 4 units as a pilot project. We've just completed the first development of 72 units, really increasing in scale and speed, working both with, building support and trust with the city of Cape Town, as well as with the communities we're working with. And I think it's so important for us to create this model that's replicable and scalable, and start off small with, in the Kwezi Park heart or hub of the Empower upgrade model, and then starting to spread through the Cape Peninsula, creating these spokes of or beacons of hope and of upgrade for supporting the surrounding communities and of course the immediately impacted beneficiaries and families. So while we're creating this model, it's one thing to get the architecture right, but we also need to get the fundraising, and even just the statutory process is correct. And we're starting to work out how, with a very small team, to create this alternative model, and that's fully legal, that regularizes the existing informal homes, providing title deeds at the end of the development to the existing residents who are living on the site. And I'm not sure the statistics offhand through the rest of the continent, but I know in South Africa about 11.5% of families live informally. And in Cape Town, that number is actually 17%. So there's a dramatic need for truly sustainable and truly affordable houses for informal populations and throughout informal settlements. So I think, I mean, there's so many factors of this I can talk about. I think just to end off, I really want to reiterate that, you know, the Empower model isn't the solution to all of our challenges, but I do think that the more homes and more individuals we can empower and uplift, the more support and assistance everyone in this webinar will receive in dealing with these urban challenges. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Ben. That was quite nice and quite inspiration there. We have a couple of questions for you, Ben. I will take Matsejo is asking, in terms of upgrading of informal settlements, should the area not be municipal owned land that needs relocation? And how do you relocate the beneficiaries to the proposed areas, or should an area be categorized from in situ upgrading and you have access that needs to be relocated? How do you work around relocating beneficiaries? And also Matsejo then follows up with, which subsidy are you using in upgrading informal settlements? How are you doing this? How are you doing with non-qualifiers who previously benefited from the grant within the informal settlements?
Yes, there's quite a few questions in that. But first of all, we're working very closely with the city, and all of these settlements that we've pinpointed are on city-owned land. So for example, our first community, BT Soweto, was actually, the informal settlement was established in 1986, and on the site, previously earmarked for public open space, for a community facility, and the city was never able to realize that because of the existing community. And those are the communities we're targeting. So we're not actually while we relocate them, it's only temporary while we can build on the site. And after the first phase, we immediately free up space on the site to build temporary residences, they call them TRAs, to house the families while we build the new homes. Initially, for the first few phases, or for especially the first phase, there was always an agreement with the residents that if they're able to find temporary accommodation, that would be first prize for about 6 months in and around the site with families and friends. Alternatively, we will house them and make a plan, and that all comes down to the algorithms through the land credit release program of how to house them and how to pay for that temporary relocation. But in the end, everyone moves back onto site. And so then, just to talk to the discussion of subsidies, there's incredible subsidies available that are incredibly difficult to access. So even just from the RDP subsidy, almost all of our 93% of Community 1 are qualifiers. There's 5 residents with 5 families within the community who don't necessarily have who aren't qualifiers, but we really believe that the community is as a whole one, and we have to accommodate for that within and account for that within the full community. So qualifiers and non-qualifiers will all receive their homes, and then we'll apply. I mean, the RDP subsidy, the BNG now subsidy is first prize, but there's a series of other subsidies, including the FLIS for first-time homeowners, that we then pull into the pot. And then we're very lucky to be funded by international foundations and local partners. We run as a non-profit, so all our donations are, it can be tax exempt or tax deductible, and we're very lucky that we're able to build so many homes with the assistance of philanthropists.
Great. We also have Mateos, who's studying for his PhD in Ethiopia. He's saying he's been faced to conceptualize urban slums versus densification, vertical build-ups to hold expansion. Can you please share your experience?
Yes, I think it's a very complex issue, and quite important to, we can't go, while it's important to increase densities in these areas, it's not actually viable to go from 0 to 100 in a matter of years. So we've gone from 1 story to 2 stories. These homes are almost, in fact, the community center especially you can see it from the N2 highway because the surrounding areas are relatively low. 2 stories is the maximum height. We're going to our next development, which is 3 stories. I think there's certain considerations just in terms of safety. So for example, in our community 2, the second development, the external staircases only actually go up onto the 1st floor, and from the 1st floor, all the units are duplexes, so all the staircases are internalized. That we don't have these long winding external public spaces where nasty, unsavory, unsafe activity can occur. We've also broken up the full development into smaller communities or into micro communities within the overall community, so that there's actually not every unit has access. Well, you can walk on any passage, they're not enclosed, but there's about groupings of between 10 and 15 homes which actually then share staircases and share passages. Well, sorry, even less actually. It's between 6 and 9 homes which share staircases and share passages, and it creates those communities within the community to account for that safety. So I think it's quite an important consideration. I mean, there's not that you can't go higher, but you just need to think about the consequences of safety and who has access and who doesn't have access.
Great, thanks so much, Ben. We have a question from Francois about what is the role of the City of Cape Town and the Western Cape government in your project, and how do you mitigate the issue of climate change aspects, such as increasing temperatures and all that?
So first of all, the City of Cape Town put in the land. So this is I guess a public-private partnership where the city will provide the land to be developed, to be transferred over to the beneficiaries. And we've also got an agreement with the city that they install all the services. So we come and build the top structure, work on the designs, the community engagement, and the city does everything below the ground. And then with regards to the sustainability of the units, we try to keep the units as low cost as possible, but there's certain areas in which the money is spent. So for example, the roofing is a structurally insulated panel. It's about 150 millimeters thick. We find it quite important to spend on that because that lands insulated in the full unit. Or with the orientations, with predominantly block cavity wall facing the north and west orientations, and the zinc facades facing south and east, and especially the shadowed facades, building those in zinc to balance affordability with sustainability. So, and there's a series of other considerations, but it's those small decisions that land on making quite a big impact.
Great. I'll take one more question for you, Ben, before we move to the other, but please note, participants, we're still going to take all the questions and also share so that you get some responses to that, because I'm cognizant of time. We still have the last presentation as well. So the last question is there security of tenure for the beneficiaries for you, Ben?
Yeah. So ultimately, we go through the land use application process, the building development plan, the building development management process, and do everything completely legally according to spatial planning, and ultimately transfer the ownership to the residents. So it's never quite as simple as that. As soon as someone owns a property, they get taken off the RDP or the BNG list. So we then have to work with residents to, let's say, for example, there's the homeowner or the primary resident has been waiting on the BNG list for 30 years. He's waiting to retire in his home elsewhere in the Eastern Cape and actually doesn't want to take ownership of this. We then work with the residents to nominate someone who will continue to live in this home to take that ownership. So ultimately, there'll be one resident in each home who will receive the title deeds for their family, and to create generational assets for that family.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing that. I think there'll be lots of follow-ups there. Our last but not the least presentation will be from Salum Mshamu from Tanzania, who's going to share more about the star homes in Tanzania. Over to you, Salum.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. And I'm very honored to be part of this webinar because there's lots to learn, and great presentation from Benjamin. I really enjoyed it. I'll share my screen now. Allow me. Do you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So as I introduce myself, my name is Salum Mshamu. I am a DPhil student at the University of Oxford and on-site principal investigator for the Star Homes project. And in this project, we are assessing the impact of novel design on prevention of malaria, respiratory tract infections, and diabetes. And sorry. Oops. In this presentation, I will share a little bit of a background of our project and the objectives, the trial design, sample size, data collection, and preliminary results. So malaria is a massive problem in Africa, and much have been done to control it, and mostly focusing on vector control, which is dependent on insecticides. But with increasing insecticide resistance, it means less benefit from treated bed nets and indoor residual spraying. And this made us start thinking about something that we can combine with indoor residual spraying and insecticide treated nets to tackle the disease, which is improving the and between 2014 and 2016, we did a small pilot project in a small village in Tanzania called Magoda. And in this project, we built 6 prototype houses. These were designed by invaluable, which is a Danish company. And with these prototypes, we built using different materials. For example, what you see in front of you is the bamboo cladded units, 2 units. And one is double story and the other one is single story. And you can see that both they have similar characteristic, as to say, because the cladded area that you see with bamboo is a sleeping area, which is raised from the floor, even for the single story building. So we did using different cladding materials, as I said. So this is a shed net cladded prototypes, and this one is using wood. And then we went on and assessed for the acceptance of these units, but also we assessed for the indoor climate and then the entomological aspect, where we are looking for the mosquito abundance. And then we are comparing it with the reference houses, which are, these are houses which are there. Some we modified them and some we just left them as they are. And the good thing about our prototype is all of our prototype did better in terms of mosquito abundance. So they both had the least number of mosquitoes in the house. So that is, the mosquito density was very low in the prototypes. And but among the prototypes, the shed net cladded prototypes did better in terms of mosquito density as well. So that brought us into another phase where we thought, like, yeah, should we test this in the field and see whether this this type of houses can actually prevent diseases. So we designed another using the ideas from the pilot study. And so what you see on your screen, this one is the novel design house that we are investigating, and this one is the traditional houses that are commonly available in the rural areas here in Tanzania. And the novel design house led by a shed net all around on the top floor, and there are 2 sleeping bedrooms on the top floor. And here at the bottom, there is a lockable storage area, and there is a kitchen area, which is but also with
I'm sorry, Salom. I think we are losing you, Salom. Perhaps if you can switch off your video.
Directing the small yeah. Hello.
Hi, we are losing you a little bit, Salom. If you'd want to switch off your video.
Yeah.
And just try again. Yeah, thanks.
I just did that. Can you hear
Great.
me now? No?
Very well now. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. So I was explaining about the house. So you can see the top floor is the sleeping area, and here at the bottom there is a lockable storage, and then there is a cooking area which has a bench for preparing food, and then there is a stove that is connected to a chimney, so that there is less smoke here. And then there is water collection system where we are collecting rainwater here. And then next.
I think we're losing you there, Salom.
Is from coming in and out of the pit. Can you hear me?
Yes, now we can.
Hello?
Yes, now we can. We can go ahead.
Thank you. All right. So so the primary objective for this study is to assess over a period of 3 years to see whether living in a novel design house will reduce the incidence of malaria in children compared to children living in traditional sub-Saharan African home. And secondarily, we want to also see whether living in novel design house can reduce the incidence of respiratory tract infection, diarrhea diseases, but also the Plasmodium falciparum parasite rates, and the overall childhood hospitalization rates as well. We're also looking at some growth parameters, so to see whether there is different in growth rates between children living in traditional houses and the novel design houses. And then we also have some entomological objectives, social sciences, the indoor climate. We are also assessing that, and the durability and cost effectiveness. So this is an open label household randomized controlled trial using generalized randomized complete block design with the village as a block. The study arms are the novel design houses compared to traditional African homes. And I have to say this, this is to our knowledge, is the first study to be done where a randomized controlled trial to be done in the field where we are actually building a whole house as an intervention. And so we have a total of 1,650 children that we are following who are under 13 years of age. 330 of them are living in 110 novel design houses, and 1,320 living in 440 traditional African homes. And we started by assessing for eligibility. So we visited surveyed 14,600 households to get 862 houses who were eligible. And then we went on and randomized the 862 households to find who will get the new house, the novel house, and who is going to be a control house. So we did this by doing an open lottery in the village meetings, and all eligible households were in this meeting, and up to 3 households were randomly selected through lottery to be awarded to a household depending on the size of the village. And in each village, you have 4 to 12 households as reference or as control. And then we also assign numbers to all the houses that are participating in the study. And also we have a picture ID for all the children that we are following for easy identification during the follow-ups. And then we provided each of a household participating in the study with health insurance so that they can have equal access to healthcare whenever they feel sick, so that we can follow up on the cases easily. So we have 2 systems of collecting data in our study. We are doing active case detection. So these are scheduled visits where the research assistants are going into the household and ask for a week history of disease and record. And then we have this passive case detection where we are following up the cases that are reported in the health facilities. So we have healthcare workers who are trained in these health facilities in the study area, who are whenever they see the study chart, they keep record of that, and then we collect that. And after 2 years of follow-up, we finally have some preliminary results, which was quite interesting to see. So in front of you, the graph you see here, the y-axis is the 3-monthly malaria incidence per child, and the x-axis is month of the year. So you can see this is quarterly, plotted per every quarter. And with this, you can clearly see that the red line is presenting the incidence of diseases of malaria per child in traditional houses. So you can see there is like more incidence of malaria in children living in the traditional houses compared to children living in the novel design houses. So with that, we also calculated the incidence rate ratio, which was at 0.71, and it was significant. It is significant. So we have 29% reduction during this 2 years period worth of data. So this was quite interesting to see, because it means that our intervention is actually working. So yeah, thank you. And I have to thank the team, which is this study. So thank you for listening.
Great. Thank you so much, Salum, for the presentation. We have some questions for you. Kindly bear with us, everyone. Apologies, we are running over a little bit, but I'm sure we'll be done in the next 5 minutes or so. The first question is, are these models scalable?
Yeah, the models are scalable, I can say. We now, since we were doing a trial, and our aim is to see whether they are protective against malaria and other diseases. So we used light gauge steel to build these houses. And maybe these light gauge steel are not easy to find in the rural environment, but they are available here in Tanzania. In the next step is to show people how to build similar houses using local available materials like wood. So they are scalable.
Great, amazing. And Winnie is asking, is there a traditional house that the project installs the mosquito net cladding? If not, why?
Okay, the traditional house that the project installed the most, shed net cladding. No, we haven't installed shed net cladding in any of the traditional houses, but we made sure that all the children that are participating in the study, they are under the bed net. And to make sure of that, we are having a team of research assistants who are doing very early visits around 5 in the morning, where the children are still sleeping, to actually see whether they are sleeping under the bed net. And they do this on-scheduled visit and randomly. We are sure that these children are actually using the bed net. So the difference we see here, is on top of 98% use of bed net. So that's what I can say. Yeah.
Great. I agree with Christopher, who's saying quite an important, impactful research there, Salum. Thank you so much for sharing your innovation, and everyone else who's shared on this platform. I want to invite Alison just to say thank you and wrap up the conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Oops.
This has been a great discussion, and I really enjoy seeing the last presentation as well as the middle one and the first one around Taft City. So thank you so much for taking the time and sharing the details of these projects with the group. As I mentioned in my input right at the beginning, there are lots of stories of innovation that are in the 2023 yearbook and also in the innovation booklet that we pulled out of the 2023 yearbook. And those are all on our website, available for free. We encourage you to go look. There's also some other links that we've shared on the chat that I hope you will also explore. And also look out for additional AUHF webinars that we do quite frequently throughout the year, which I'm sure you'll enjoy. The 2024 yearbook process will start in a couple months, so you can look out for that as well. But thank you again to the presenters for putting together the presentations, taking the time to be with us and to answer the questions. And thank you all for making the time out of your day to join us for this discussion. I hope you enjoyed it.